Hello, good morning, and welcome to this Finley Chair webinars. I think this webinar series has been going on for this whole year. It's been very successful, and again, thanks for coming. So first, I'd like to thank the Finley family for their generous donations to make this series possible. So they funded the Finley Chair for me, which helps support this webinar series. We have a very exciting topic, and the speaker today, Dr. Ian Ho from Penn State University. Dr. Ho works in the area of consumer behavior and its impact, basically impact on the consumers in terms of their shopping patterns based on the technology. And I think the title of his topic is pretty exciting, Shopify and the gaming. So we're all looking forward to that. So without much delay, I'll hand it over to Dr. Ho, and he'll share the screen and start.
Okay.
And again, another thing is that Dr. Ho said that he's welcome questions in the middle. So if you have any questions, just unmute yourself and have an interactive session. So we're looking for an interactive session here.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Jin. Thank you for your kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity for me to share excitement about my research at the UTC. Today, I'm planning to discuss gamification technologies, which are emerging and interesting to me, and hopefully we can see more potential about gamifications. And so this is a joint work with my colleagues, Shiyuan and Michelle at Penn State. So before we start, so we need an official kickoff. So I'm going to use a piece of the super famous BGM for our official kickoff. So this is actually the most exciting music when I was very young. So every time when I feel down, actually I play the video game, especially Super Mario, to make me come back to the regular routines. So that will be how fun I try to illustrate about the game to the human beings. So let's do the first thing first. So before we get started, I'd like to define what is gamification is. So basically, we use the game features such as badges and a leaderboard outside of the game context itself. For instance, I use the badges of the Yellow League to motivate my students to talk more, to discuss more, to contribute more in my classroom. Or if you have the Fitbit, you can easily join the leaderboard to work out, to compete with your friends on the leaderboards. So given such exciting gamification technologies, and so we're going to see a lot of different perspectives, different discussion about this technology. So I'm going to highlight some of the interesting statistics from the anecdotal evidence to illustrate the growth, the potentials, and the issues of the gamification. So from the survey, you can see that the gamification have reached about 7 billion global markets by 2019 before the COVID-19. And then this number is projected by growth to $40 billion by 2024. And then we also noticed that 40% of the international organization gamify their daily operations to increase the efficiency of the operations. However, we also see 60% of such projects fail to meet their goals. So given this dynamics actually motivate us to understand, try to have the desire to deeper understand what could be the best use of the gamification and what could be the potential. So that's exactly the purpose and the motivations why we have to study this paper. So in these papers, we try to ask 3 different questions. First of all, we like to quantify the effect of gamification in the interface of the information system and the marketing. And specifically, we're going to examine 2 different types of games. We consider badges and the leaderboard, not only because of their popularity in the practice, but also the motivation they try to motivate the users in theory. And then so that's actually specifically badges exercise the self-achievement, self-determination from the entrance card of the consumers, whereas the leaderboards utilize the competitions, implement the social comparison type of mechanism. So if we can do a side-by-side comparisons, and definitely we can understand the nature of the game itself. In this regard, we have the second questions. We try to compare gamifications with traditional coupon, especially for a shopping context. From theoretical perspective, gamification pulls behavioral intrinsic motivation from the consumer, whereas couponing will be very straightforward, pushes monetary incentive to consumers. So we can compare the pull and push models in a shopping setting. I think that will be interesting, especially when we have the side-by-side comparisons between the gamification and the couponing, and we can realize which methods have a longer effect, it will be more effective or more sustainable engagement strategies we can apply for the marketers. Lastly, we care about the role of the heterogeneity in gamification effect. Especially we look at demographics levels. That's where we from the consumer side that we like to zoom into the effect of the game itself. So we are going to see at the game level by itself. So that would be 3 different questions. Once again, we're going to quantify the effect of gamification regarding 2 different features. And then we do a side-by-side comparison between gamification and couponing. And then we're going to estimate, we try to quantify the long-term effect for the gamification and the couponing, what could the mechanisms are different. And lastly, we try to see the moderation of different heterogeneity from consumer side or from game design side. So that will be the 3 questions I like to answer in this paper. So far, are we good? So yeah, once as the Professor James mentions, stop me anytime if you want to have the more explanation or some comments, and then please go for it. Okay. All right. So I think actually for the research papers, we try to contribute to the literature, especially in the gamification literature, in 5 directions. First of all, so we try to extend the understanding of the gamification literature in the interface of the marketing and IS applications. So surprisingly, Shaw et al. 2019 will be the only conference papers discuss the commercial uses of the applications in the shopping setting. But actually, we do shoppings online, offline, almost daily, such that we believe that the new technology, new applications understood in this domain will be very interesting. Second, as we discussed in the research questions, we compare 2 game features in a single setting. Prior literature most likely will focus on 1 gamification features in a single setting. So very few papers look at the 2 comparisons, side-by-side comparison for different games in 1 settings. And also we extend this comparison to another paradigms of the motivation, which is monetary incentives using the coupons. So that's actually we'll try to have a more detailed comparisons for different mechanisms. Number 3 contributions we try to do is actually we the first try to understand, try to estimate the long-term effect of the gamification. This is a whole new aspect of the gamification literature. And then, so you can see that a lot of people call for this type of quantifications. And number 4 is we try to understand, we try to utilize the different aspects of the heterogeneity to understand the use of the gamification. As I discussed, prior literatures actually look at the very specific demographic segments such that they cannot come with a comprehensive understanding of the gamifications. And then, so in the later discussions, you can see a lot of interesting about the heterogeneity across different consumer segments. And lastly, we try to have the causal inferences using randomized field experiments, whereas prior literatures mainly relies on archive analysis, lab experiments, and also the survey data. So we hope to actually provide a comprehensive contributions to the literature in 5 directions once again. So new domains we try to explore, we try to extend the understanding to that particular domain. That will be the shopping settings. Second, and we try to do a side-by-side comparison for the couponing, for the gamifications. Third, we try to estimate the longer effects of the gamifications. Number 4, we look at heterogeneity from different perspectives. And lastly, we conduct a very, very interesting and I think a very exciting randomized experiment to quantify the causal inference for the gamification. All right, so I'm going to use our research framework to lay out the entire structure of the paper. So once again, so we try to understand what could be the effect of the gamification, especially we look at 2 different features, badges and leaderboards. So badges utilizes self-determinations to engage users. They pull all the intrinsic motivation. I want to do this, I want to make this happen. And I have the like self-achievement reward by receiving the badges. While leaderboards implement social comparisons, you compete with friends, you compete with strangers, such that motivate you want to make the best of use of yourself. And of course, the coupons redemption depends on the economic rationale. So that will be 3 different mechanisms. We try to do the parallel comparisons, and then we are interested in the short-term and the long-term effects. That will be entire conceptual framework for our paper. Right, so that will be the research questions, contributions, and also the entire structure, logical flow of our paper. All right, so now I'm going to introduce our empirical settings. So that's exciting and a very, very novel randomized experiments I have already done. So I have already done a lot of different randomized experiments, but this one is really making me excited. And every time when I dream about these projects, I'm really smiling. And so try to understand these research questions, and then we partner with one of the largest shopping mall in China to conduct our experiments. So it is a comprehensive mall with and hosting over 300 stores, 300 stores with a very healthy customer traffic. It provides a free Wi-Fi service to enhance the shopping experience for its customers, such that those customers can check out the latest news and using the check out the latest news and the events, and also look at using the shopping portals to enhance their shopping satisfaction. More importantly, we also utilize the Wi-Fi system to deliver our treatments to a consumer. Of course, more details I'm going to discuss it later, just in a few minutes. And then we use the Wi-Fi system to deliver our treatments, and also use the Wi-Fi system to track their shopping patterns. When it's where they are located, which store they are visit, how much money they are spending, so that everything is actually integrated in the Wi-Fi system. Right, and then so specifically we deliver our treatments in different directions. We have the badges, leaderboards, and the coupon, as we just discussed in the research framework. And so the entire experiments last for 8 weeks, taking place in the summer of 2018. And so in the following slides, I'm going to discuss more detail about experiment design. So the typical use case for the Wi-Fi system is if you are the new customers come to the mall, and of course that's your selections, whether you're going to use the Wi-Fi or not. Because in the China settings, most likely people have to buy the data plan. It's not like the United States users for the telecom services. So they have a limited data plan, such that they are more willing to take advantage of the free Wi-Fi system. And so once you are decided to join the Wi-Fi system, it's required the first time login using your WeChat, which is a WhatsApp Chinese versions of WhatsApp to login. And then so thereafter, so every time you come here, the system recognizes your devices and it will automatically connect you to the Wi-Fi if you want to use that. All right, so that would be the typical cases. As I mentioned, that's quite slightly different from China and the United States. So 90% of the consumers would like to take advantage of the Wi-Fi systems. All right, so here will be our experiment design. So as we discussed, we're going to have 3 treatment groups, namely group badges, leaderboard, and the coupon. and along with a control group. And then please pay attention to your right-hand side. That will be the outcome of interest we invested in this paper. So we specifically look at 3 different dimensions: money spending, walking distance, and the number of store visits. So that's capture different type of engagement, and hopefully we can have a more comprehensive understanding about gamification impact and also the coupons. All right, before the experiment starts, we start to collect users' shopping patterns to profile the users 2 months before the experiment starts. So this information will be very crucial to ensure we can do the pre-treatment balances, because we know that the cornerstones, the stepping stone for the randomization experiments is all about comparability across different experimental groups. So we start to keep track of all the shopping patterns 2 months before the random assignment taking place. And then we divide the entire observation window into 2 periods. The first 4 weeks are defined as the treatment period, wherein consumer may collect badges, compete on leaderboards, or redeem coupons. 4 weeks later, we immediately stop games and expire coupons. And then we sit behind such that we can observe the dynamic changes of consumer behaviors after we remove the treatments. So you can imagine that these 2 period settings is helping us to continuous monitoring the shopping patterns and to quantify the post-treatment effects. So that can help to answer the long-term, short-term effects of the gamification versus coupon.
Could I ask you a quick question here for
Please.
your outcome? I understand that you use spending as a pretty typical measure. And for distance and store visit, do you mean that people get different kind of promotion will have more longer distance to walk and they can visit more stores? Is that the rationale behind it?
Yeah, so I think actually I want to make an analogy. So such that, for instance, if we study in the social media, probably different type of the engagements means different things. For instance, you can like, you can comment, you can share, but actually there are many different extent or different dimensional aspects. As you mentioned, so exactly. So the distance we use Wi-Fi tracking such that we can see where they walk, how long, and then how many stores they visit. Because this Wi-Fi tracking system allows to have the visibility to look at which store they are newly exploring or which store they are skipping, something like that. Thank you for your.
Yeah, if then would there be a very high correlation between distance and store visits?
I mean, to some extent there is a correlations, but in terms of different gamification and the coupon designs, they slightly have a different flavor. For instance, I just say some preliminary results, a glance of the results. So you can imagine that in terms of design of the gamifications, and then they probably motivate specific type of the outcomes. People may walk more, but not necessarily visit more store, or people may spend more, especially you give a coupon to do a target specific stores. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Robin at all. Yeah, so that will be our 2-period design. For the first 4 weeks, given randomizations assignments for the badges, people can collect badges, can compete on leaderboards, and also redeem their coupons if they receive that. And of course, after 4 weeks later, we stop those treatments, and then so we can do a side-by-side comparison for the treatment period and the post-treatment period. All right, so in the following slides, I'm going to discuss the treatments one by one, and depends on the subject's group assignments, and the treatments notification and the instruction will be sent to her through the SMS text messages and also WeChat messages. So we make sure that they really receive this. And so for the badge groups, there are 9 badges for different shopping categories. So we design this way is actually follow most like a predictional perspective, because when we do a randomized experiments, so there is some specific requirements from the mall itself. So consumer will earn a badge if they make the necessary purchase in a very specific shopping category. For instance, if I buy the espressos like this, and then so I should get the coffee badges. So please note that she is the only person to check out the collections of hers. And also she's the only person to look at progress of her collections on a program page. You're probably going to ask me why I designed this way, because as I mentioned in the research framework, we don't want to contaminate the badges treatments, come out with the social comparison or bragging type of the mechanism. And of course, I totally agree that you can change different game designs that probably have a different effect. But in here, in theory, we try to see different mechanisms, different motivation theories, how they pull the power of the consumer from the deep part and to do something else. So that's a specific design for the game. And of course, in the future directions, and we can explore it, and then and other researchers can explore different type of game designs to see whether could be the optimal use of the badge. All right, so that would be the badge groups. If you make a purchase in the categories, I give you a badge. All right, so as for the group leaderboard, a consumer can accumulate points for her shopping distance and the store visit. So we grant 20 points for every store visit and 1 point for every 100-meter walk. So unlike badges, a public leaderboard will display the focal user's rank against the entire pool, subject pools, which refreshes every minute. And also I want to make it clear, there's no any monetary incentive for these two game features, including the badges and the leaderboard. So that's only for the psychological attachments and the mental engagement attachments to the shopping mall, rather than have to provide any incentives about this. So once again, that's because the purpose of doing this research is not really looking at the combination of different monetary incentive and the behavioral type of motivation. Instead, we try to have a clear cut across different motivation theory and the motivation contexts. All right, so and I also want to mention, so probably some consumer will forget what they had or they have already done in terms of the treatments. So every time they can come back to the shopping mall, we're going to send a reminder once again via the text message and the WeChat message as well to remind it. And of course, they are self-selected to join or not, or continuous or not. So we open for their own choices. All right, so we have the badges, leaderboards. Now we can look at the coupons. So coupons, we designed this in a way actually allow the users, the subjects in this group receive a random store specific coupon for 20% of a discount. So for these randomizations, because we don't want to do any coupon targeting in specifically, so we just provide general monetary incentives and then not stick with product levels. Instead, we look at the store level, and then those store levels are actually randomized to those group. Some may match with the user's preference, some may not. And then so that will be how we will randomize those coupons design. For instance, my best friend Jinsik is a super lucky guy, receive coupons for a sport equipment store. I know he needs more exercise. And then so you can expect that the coupon right now is one-time use. And of course, if you have more like multiple times uses, probably the sales goes up. So that will be, typical design for the coupons, and then we follow by the marketing literature to look at it. The simplest coupon design. So that will be once again the focus of the research is compare the gamification against couponing. All right, so as a subject in the control group, I only received the welcome greetings. So, and then once again, the instructions and the assignments will send us through the text messages, and also the reminder. Once I come back, I will receive the reminder about the treatment assignments. Okay, so that will be the 4 groups: badges, leaderboards, coupon, and control groups. So any question about experiment design, we have the 4 experimental groups 3 treatments, 1 control, 2 periods, 3 different outcomes. That would be exactly the entire overview of the experiment design. If we don't have questions, that's just moving forward. All right, so to get more information from subjects, we conduct a survey right after treatment assignments. All right, so I mean, at the very beginning, we have a pretty good, pretty decent response rate, is about 78%. And then we did every effort to collect the comprehensive data. So we collaborate with the sales representative every time they check out, and we ask, could you help to fulfill the survey? So by the end, actually, we come with a very good and outstanding fulfillment rate by the 96% about fulfill rate. And so in this survey, we specifically collect different dimensions of the data. So we have demographics, we have the satisfaction levels, we have the shopping companions options, occasions, and also we make sure that they receive the treatments confirmation or not. So this survey is trying to give us more information, try to understand the consumer's backgrounds, and also those information can be used as a control or even a heterogeneous treatment investigation in an empirical setting. All right, so we randomly assign so many users in the entire, customer base. However, because of computational limitations, because you have to calculate how long they walk for each trajectory, which means that each visit of the store, such that we limit our data to 2,000 subjects are randomly selected from each group to construct the final samples. So before we moving forward, it is necessary to ensure compatibility across experimental group. In this regard, we do a double duty here. So recall that, right? So before the experiment starts, there's 2 months period of time. We collect all the shopping patterns, what they purchased, where they work, which store they visit, and we use those information to do the balance check. So therefore, we can run the pre-treatment checks. Very similar to other experiment designs. So we run a series of the T and the join the F tests to confirm the balance across different groups. Once again, we have the badge, leaderboard, coupon, and the control group. So that would be the first duty we have done for the balance check before the random assignments. However, once you do a random assignment, probably your random assignment not necessarily guarantee the randomization. So in this regard, we use the demographics information we collect from the survey to do the second duty, which is post-treatment assignment checks. So we use the demographics, address, genders, income, and also their device types to make sure that. So once again, we run a series of T and then join F test to make sure that all these 4 groups are statistically identical. So such that we can guarantee our randomizations is okay, and then we can derive solid and rigorous analysis. All right, so at the end, we should have 8,000 representative and balanced subjects for the following analysis. Now, and so in the empirical analysis, we start with the model-free evidence, followed by the regression analysis. In the regression analysis, we're going to discuss average treatment effects. Abbreviation will be the ATE, and then the heterogeneity and the demographic and the GAN levels. That would be HTE. And then we conclude our empirical analysis with the mechanical checks. Specifically, we look at the exploration effects, companion shopping cases, and also the seasonality. Right, so that will be the entire overview pictures of our empirical analysis. So for an illustration purpose, let's take a glance at the 2 case tests regarding the shopping amount, just for illustration purpose. And of course, we can replicate this procedure for the other 2 outcomes. So for your information, what is 2-key test? 2-key test help us to pull all the samples together and jointly estimate the pairwise t-tests. So that would be more efficient and more robust rather than the 2 groups of t-tests. So how will we read this? First of all, please help me to pay attention to the treatment period right here. So that will be the first period we'll focus on. And then so please look at the last bottom row of these tables. So in this regard, we can see that we found very significant treatment effects across all the 3 treatment groups compared with the control groups. In other words, consumers are motivated by the badges, leaderboard, and the coupon to spend more. So that will be the first glance of the 2 case tests to confirm that the effectiveness of the treatment effects. And then if we switch the focus to the post-treatment period right here, and once again, let's look at the last row of the tables. So what we learned? So only 2 gamification features stay engaged, and then whereas coupons effects is completely different in these patterns. So the coupon group is different from the control group. That will be the very qualitative analysis for now. But now that later on you can expect we are going to use a regression analysis to have a more rigorous and quantified effects. So in the regression models, we take log values of the outcomes as our dependent variables. So pay attention to a superscript K indicates 3 different outcomes: money spent, walking distance, and number of store visits. As for the subscripts, refers to user I in the group J, A times T. So that will be the superscript and the subscripts, right? So the model consists of, first, there will be the treatment period, treatment domains that capture treatment effects in the treatment period. Second, the 2-way interactions between the main effects and also the period that calibrate the marginal changes, once again, marginal changes in the second period of time. And of course, we add the controls collected from the survey. That would be entire model. So 3 components. First of all, the first 3 turns capture the treatment effects, and then 2-way interaction between these treatment domains and the time calibrating, capturing the marginal changes on top of the first period. That would be the marginal changes, and then with the control variables. All right, so for the tables, we can observe a few things in the results tables. First of all, they are strong and the consistent effects for these 3 outcomes. And then second, if you look at the post-domain coefficients, you see an insignificant. That's indicating that there is no exhaustion shock. There's no time variant shock taking place during our experiments. So the period 1, period 2 will be very peaceful. So that the entire experiments will be very clean for now. And the third, you can see the marginal changes in the second period of time. That will be captured by negative and significant coefficients. If you do a subtraction or difference between the main effects and the marginal changes, you can still see the leftover for the games, no matter its badges and the leaderboards. That actually can help us quantify the leftover effect of the gamification in the second period of time. However, if you look at the differences between the main effect of the coupon and its interactions, you can see the couponing effect evaporates in the second period done completely. So we can translate this coefficient into economic significance. In the treatment period, badges and leaderboard promotes the sales by 21.5 and 22.5%. So that will be equal to additional $27 and $28 in the shopping expenditure for a period, which means 4 weeks. And the coupon boosts the revenue the most, resulting in about 36.5% increase in sales. Turning to the post-treatment period, the badges and the leaderboards groups stay engaged, and the continuous contributed additional $11 and $8. So badges spend a little bit more than the leaderboards, even though the effect is not as strong as before. But actually, we can see there's nothing left for the coupon groups. So that will be the quantification from the empirical models, and that will be the average treatment effects in the following analysis, we can go deeper. So we can further decompose what do we see as an average treatment effect and then to the heterogeneous treatment effects regarding different demographics. And then so we can start the moderations of the gender. Please note that right here is we code the gender dummy equal to 1 for the gentleman. In this regard, we can expand the original model to have main effects capture the ladies' treatment effects. Two-way interactions between the treatment effects and the genders that calibrate gentlemen's treatment effects. And these trends, of course, are going to referring to ladies' post-treatment changes, and then we conclude with a model with the gentleman's post-treatment margins. So that will be the full components we expanded from the 3 original models by adding the gender as additional variables as the main interactions we care about. All right, so in these results, first of all, we can see ladies also salience have a salience treatment effects as well. And we also expect ladies in general have the higher purchase power for the gentlemen. That is exactly saying that what is the group difference for the genders. And then we can notice that the males are more into gains, which you can see more, the positive marginal effects on top of the ladies that will be combining and then illustrated. Gentlemen is more into the games, whereas the negative turns for the coupons for the male, which means that females prefer coupons. So that's actually illustrated. Different kind of the promotion strategy or engagement strategies will be targeting different segments. All right, and then so if we switch our focus to the post-treatment period, the gamification effects disappear for the females. However, we can still see that male will maintain their shopping patterns and then they'll stay engaged. So I just want to make fun of the gentlemen. So I think, I would like to say, we get used to something and we stick with something. So we are very stubborn. And so that's at least that's to describe myself. And then I really appreciate the flexibility of the ladies. So that's actually, I think when I do these results and I smile to myself. Right, so we have already showed that the genders actually will be moderating the effect of different motivations. So some people will be more interested in the games, especially for the males. Right, and the ladies will be more in terms of the shopping, in terms of using coupons. All right. So here are more heterogeneities. So young generation, of course, are more willing to participate in the gamifications. And so we can quantify those effects. A 10% decrease in the age will lead to 1 to 3% increases in different outcomes. So I think that's very expected. And then so once again, you can easily translate this coefficient into better targeting strategy. As for income, different income groups actually prefer different type of games. The high income groups, consumers like more collect badges. They are low profile, but they are like to spend more. And whereas the low income segments is more active on the leaderboards. So, of course, there's some correlation among the different demographics, but we try to use the models to see some big pictures about heterogeneity. So in summary, so heterogeneity really plays a role. And then in the previous literatures, and actually they are not using those heterogeneity treatment effects. I think that is a pity, and then such that we have the chance to actually look at this moderations of the demographics on the gamification. And definitely that will be very useful. And then so after these studies, so the shopping mall managers actually utilize this to do better targeting. So that's actually we have some anecdotal evidence. And when we do have a discussion and the internal reports. Okay, so far we have a discussion the moderation of demographics. Let's switch the gear to look at within group heterogeneity. So once again, so the previous HTE is based on the demographics of consumer, different segments have a different responses. But now we'll switch different angles. We're going to see what is the variation with the group for different kind of mechanisms. So that's actually if the variation within a group responses are different from across different groups, you can say something about the nature of the game or nature of the treatments. So that's the purpose why we need to switch another angles to look at heterogeneity. I think this was completely new in terms of analysis. So as I discussed, so if treatments, for instance, badges is very, very acceptable across different type of people, and then so the spread, the variances of the outcome for the badge group should be relatively small, which means that people will have a consensus about how to play the badges or how to collect badges. However, if there is a game or other type of treatments have a very wide spread of the outcomes, the variations within the group is very, very high, which means that people have different opinions to this type of treatments. So how we do this? So if we focus on one treatment and we calculate the variance of the outcomes within a group, so we have a distribution of the entire pool of that particular treatments for distribution. So one, we have a distribution 1 for the group 1, distribution 2 have a group 2, and then we can do the F test, and we can do ANOVA test to do a variance test to see those variance is the same or not. So that's exactly why we need the F test to see the variation within groups is different or not across different experimental groups. So you can see the significant F statistics showing that there existed significant differences for the variation for the groups. So that's once again, it's very like qualitative type of the results. We know they are different, but how different they are, we need an empirical model. So to sharpen analysis, we specify a hierarchical-based model to estimate heterogeneity at the individual level. So please pay attention to the coefficient over here. So right now, in the previous version, we don't have I for the betas, but right now we have the beta for i's. So once we obtain each individual's betas, and we can empirically approximate how different the subject pool respond to different treatments. So once again, those pools should be identical, right? So that's actually the balances we have checked already. And then we use a more advanced model to really characterize each individual responses. And then once you have those individuals' behaviors, and then you can empirically really draw the distribution for the group rather than just see the outcome itself. All right. And then so this is very straightforward hierarchical-based model. So you can use a Gibson polar to estimate models. So that would be very light on models. So yeah, sorry. So I want to make a common sentence. So some people criticize that a randomized experiment will be too simple, not fancy in terms of econometrics. And I don't like these comments because I think a randomized experiment is really interesting and then it's a solid and a clean design. However, if you can combine with more advanced statistical models, and actually you can get more insights. So that's actually the 2 cents about research experience I like to share at this moment. So once again, we estimate these models, and then so we can look at the estimated covariance matrix right here. So please help me to pay attention to the diagonal coefficient right here, which means some variations within that group. Right, so we can see that if we do the comparisons, we can see that the leaderboard has the highest within group heterogeneity, which is suggesting that the leaderboards could specifically motivate some segments of the pool, but however, this encourages some of the users in the groups. So once again, those groups should be very identical, but the spread of the responses, how proactive they are responses is completely different across different groups, especially when you see the leaderboard is widespread, and which means that people are happy with that, people want to really compete with that for those more competitive nature of people. However, people will be just ignored if they are mild or they are not feel interested in that. So that will be the interpretation of this. And then that's also help us to explain why we see the literature have so many mixed findings for leaderboards. Some papers look at the leaderboards is not useful. Some people say that this encouraging. Some people say no effect. So if you don't really account for this heterogeneity and the responses, you look at average treatment effect, and you probably cannot see such a interesting insight. And if we do a comparison between leaderboards and the badges, so you can see the badges variations. It is particularly smaller than the leaderboards, which means the badges will be more moderate, more mild, more acceptable type of games to recruit more broader audiences. So you can think about why this matters, and then so that will be the empirical findings, and also we find this radical support in terms of these findings. All right, so that will be the within group heterogeneity results. Right, the last part we will reach out the discussion, alternative explanations. So that's we try to understand what could be the mechanism behind this. Not because even though we have the theory, I'm motivated by the other papers, but for the economics perspective, we need to pin down mechanisms. So we know that given the treatments, definitely will motivate your consumer to explore more about the shopping malls, right? So you probably receive some random store coupons, and then those coupons you never visit that store, and you probably go there. Or I give you 9 badges, and then you probably going to see what kind of store in those categories, such that you have more explorations. And of course, walking for the leaderboards, that's a result in more explorations. So because of those treatment designs, and then there's maybe have more explorations in the shopping mall led to the treatment effect we observed. To capture such a gain or a treatment explorations, we can construct a new dependent variables that calculated ratio of the outcome taking place on newly explored store during the experiments to the total amount. For instance, I spend $10, probably $2 I spend a newly discovered store. That's actually well accounted for exploration. Because we have the treatment group and the control group, so we should capture this. So that's also highlight why we needed to collect the previous shopping history 2 months before those store. And then we define those newly discovered store will be the new stores, not actually visit in the previous 2 months period of time. And of course, I'm not saying that it will be 100% precise, but that's what we try to capture. So once we construct this new dependent variables, we can replace this back to the average treatment effect model. And then let's see the results together. So in these tables, we notice that gamifications does promotions once again. So if you give a treatments and then actually spend more time, spend more money, and then visit more stores, and that's new. I mean, proportion-wise to say. And then, but such an exploration effects melt down quickly after the game stops and the gamification and the coupon expires. So therefore, if we just combine all the clues we just learned, so we have a salient treatment effects. We have some leftover effects in the post-treatment period. But for the explorations, we see stronger exploration in the first period, but there is no exploration in the second period. If we combine these two pieces of evidence, and then we probably can infer that explorations taking the first places in the first period, but actually it's gone. And then the leftover attachments probably will be the psychological, mentally attachments, rather than the rational exploration and so on. So which means that they still go back to the store they like, but actually now they are willing to spend more time. They are willing to work more or often spend more money on those stores they have been familiar with in the previous experiments. Prior to the experiments. So that's actually the two pieces of evidence we try to combine to make an inference. As for the convenience spillovers, and of course, people may think about if you shopping with your friends, your girlfriends, your wife, your kids, you're probably going to spend more. And so definitely we agree with that. So the best way we can do is actually try to eliminate the iterations of this treatment effect from the companion shopping. So the beauty of using Wi-Fi system trackings, we can see whether devices will come over in the shopping mall, and then along with it to see whether there's a convenience for this particular users. And then of course this happens, so that's actually we can clean this out. And also we have another data to look at whether your survey, the survey data, whether you do the convenience shopping or not. So we use these two data, and then we should be able to successfully distinguish non-convenience shopping versus convenience shopping. So in this regards, we show the robust evidence of the gamifications using non-convenience shopping subsamples. So, and of course, there's a complementarity for the convenience shopping and the gamification rather than the coupons. That would be a side notes. But I just want to say that convenience shopping will be not really a concern, but that will be more like a complementarity. So we still have this. And then, so we also consider and bothered by seasonality. So once again, so we conduct our research, we conduct our experiments in the summertime, and then we can expect that so many students, so many young kids will come over to a shopping mall. And then we know that there's a strong correlation between the age and the gamification engagement. So that will be biased the results. So in this regard, we once again, we focus on non-student shoppers, which is older than 21 years old. And then, so we run subsamples, and then we have the, we have the empirical regularities. So that will be actually, we try to make sure that all the alternative explanation, all the mechanisms we can well control. So that will be 3 different mechanisms we checked. First of all, exploration does happen. But that doesn't happen most likely in the first period. So once the treatment's gone and then the exploration stops, they just come back to the original store they are familiar with, and then they spend more time attached to those stores. And second, convenience shopping. I mentioned that there's not hurting, but actually will be enhancing the gamification effect. So look at the non-convenience shopping occasions, we can still see robust results. And lastly, seasonality will be promote more gamification effects because the different demographic groups. That if you look at the older groups, they still have a robust and the regularity of the empirical analysis. All right. So I think actually that will be the summary of the findings. First of all, if you look at the average treatment effect, and then we can see gamification is useful, and the gamification is bring the longer shopping distance, more engagements, spend more, and so gamification also have longer effect than coupon. Coupon will be very immediate effect. If you want boost the short-term revenue sales and go for coupon, that's for sure. But pay attention to that. If you have the couponing, which means that you are going to sacrifice your revenue margin significantly, like 20% or 10%. And then for the heterogeneous treatment effects, and then we mentioned that demographic moderation really matters. And then so in this regard, different genders have different responses to different kind of the motivations. And then that's what I mentioned that again will be nature for the gentlemen, and the coupon will be more attractive to the ladies. And I also mentioned that with in-group heterogeneity, leaderboard can be a double-edged sword to encourage super competitive nature of personality. However, it discourage those people come with a more mind or lack to competition. So that's actually what the heterogeneous treatment effects we learned from it there. And lastly, that's very interesting. We see the temporal exploration effects. And then so if you wanted to get more explorations, you probably continues with your gamification features and so on. That's also because of the call for action nature for your gamification design. All right, so here is the summary of the results, and then we can derive several insights for practitioners. So now we can talk about managerial implications. So to the managers, and gamification is an effective tool to engage the consumers in a long-term fashion. And so it's generating more explorations. And also we argue that there should be more behavioral attachments from a consumer perspective. As a result, it could be very useful to cultivate the long-term customer relationships using gamifications. So that would be the first implications we're going to have. We discussed for the normal manager. And the second, we mentioned that we can utilize different games to do the targeting strategies. So for instance, for the young kids, we can design more interesting game to allow them to explore more. And then for time goes by when they grow up, so they are going to recall this and they have a more attachment to a shopping mall. And besides, we like to remind the game designers for a few things. Okay, it will be very critical, as we mentioned that as outcomes were very close to your game design. So you have to attach game incentives to design outcomes seamlessly. That will be something we can learn from these studies. For instance, if you really want redirect traffic, the eyeball catching badges could be crafted for a more broader audience or consumers to visit newly debuted stores. And then also, if you really wanted to motivate some competitive nature of the users, then leaderboard will be the way you to go, but you sacrifice the entire population's attention. So more importantly, designers should carefully configure leaderboards to maintain a fair and a decent and motivating competitive environments. So I think that's very hard, but if you have enough data, definitely you can do so. And then so put everything together. So I think the gamification will be very useful, and then that will be one-time investment, and then you can continue to revamp and then reuse the infrastructure you just built. It's not like you print out coupons and then that you sacrifice the marginal revenue for a short period of time. Instead, the gamification gives you another alternatives to engage your consumer in a fun way. And that will be the major implication in a summary. All right, so that's everything I prepared today. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the conversation as I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Dr. Ho?
Yes, I mean, so any questions, please?
I know that metaverse become pretty dominant these days. And do you have any kind of suggestion for example, Facebook? What would it be from your results?
I think actually what I can see from my study is actually the combination or synergy between the online and offline. So I know that the Facebook or metaverse, they try to move a lot of activity online. So I think that's more like, not really like gamification itself, it's more like a game itself. So I think actually that will be the fashions of the new, engagement strategy. What we can learn from this paper is actually engagement. People like games and then it's more interactive and the virtual reality type of things that can enhance applications. But from the consumer perspective, not really from the research perspective, I think they still have some limitation between online and offline. Otherwise, we're going to go for like metrics, we go completely online. So I think definitely that would make a strong impact for retailer offline specifically. But I think actually there's also an opportunity for the online offline integrations and so on and so forth. And then so now we can also see that gamification or any kind of technology will come with a marginal cost production and replications natures. So in this regard, I think that's more profitable in terms of the virtualizing or gamifying things online. And then I can see that you can sell in more digital goods. That's also very good. So I don't know whether the the Facebook or the metaverse, they'll go with an advertising model anymore. So most likely, I guess they are going to become more like a content creator type of the platforms. And then so you can also you can eyeball it. You can see that now people for Netflix, they originally just as a streaming broadcasting platform, but now it becomes one of the best content creators. So I think Facebook originally based on a lot of interactions from the users, and then they are selling the users' contents as attractions. But now I think that is probably invent or create their own contents to enrich that type of things. Yeah, that's how I feel. But yeah, do you have any thoughts? And then Subin, so do you have any thoughts about this discussion? Should we buy the stocks from the metaverse, or we should keep it?
If I know that, probably I'll be in Wall Street.
Okay.
So there is another question from Eva. Eva, you want to ask the question or you want me to read it?
No, I put it in the chat. I mean,
yeah, I know, but if you want to go ahead and ask the question.
Sure. So it just made me think about kind of going beyond shopping. If this effort to influence behavior in these ways might apply and might be a way to apply it in healthcare, because I know for a while this seemed to be big in corporate training, which was kind of my world a few years ago, and then it sort of petered out. I think in part because people just got kind of tired of it; they got kind of over badged. But more, it just made me think about if there are ways to modify people's behaviors for positive things, like I said, like healthcare, or even people who are trying to, change other habits, like quitting smoking, or I don't know, just kind of a random thought of how else this kind of thing might work.
I mean, Eva, I think actually you make a great point. So we can see that gamification is, I mean, for myself, gamification will be a method rather than the mechanism or motivation behind. So I think gamification design is more like interface design or user experience design. So and of course, people have to come up with a new versions of engagement strategies, and that's actually make a new excitement happening. And then people will get tired of for any kind of things, no matter it's game or something like that. So I think that's also back to Subin's comments. So Facebook will try to utilize the crowd, the intelligence of the crowd, and try to get more excitement about the applications. And then in terms of the gamification, I think it was again more like will be the user experience design. User experience design type of the questions. So now you can see that if you invest in stock market, so right now a lot of different applications like Robinhood, actually they are using gamification type of features and actually can attract the younger generation actually start to do the investment. And then they try to also make the slick user experience, user interface design such that the transactions and the transaction costs are going down, the search costs are going down, but actually have more intuitive type of things. So I think not only for the gamification, but in terms of the visualization and all kind of the engagement strategy will be blend together type of things. And of course, I believe this type of the philosophy and the concept can apply to different contexts, as long as we are human beings share some commonality across the different demographics. So that will be what I'm thinking about the response to your great point. Thank you so much, Eva.
Okay, great. The Prashant is the next question. Prashant, you want to go ahead and ask it?
Sure. So great presentation, Ian. My question: you have very large data set, and it's I would say very how do I put it? It's like you are tracking a lot of things.
That's
the Wi-Fi access. So is it possible to do the same thing in US given all the privacy implications?
I think that's actually will be the hard questions. I like to take it offline. No, just kidding. So yeah, that's exactly. I mean, yeah, we do the permission for the privacy, but yeah, I think actually will be a limitation for the United States research field. But I think actually what Facebook they are doing, so they now they're hiring a lot of good computer scientists, a lot of economists, and then actually they do a lot of randomized experiments. So the approach we are doing is exactly the same, but I think definitely for the researchers, unfortunately, we are limited by the privacy concerns. Yeah. So I think a lot of implications. So if we have time, I mean, all of us, if we have a sabbatical time, and I think that's definitely very beneficial. So if we can spend like a year or half a year and look at like Uber companies, Facebook, and then I think actually have more excitement. And also the Amazons, they are very welcome to give me peoples to collaborate with them. So I think that would be very interesting. Yeah. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah. So I have a question, Ian. I think an excellent presentation, very interesting. So I was wondering, you did this study and the experiment in the physical mall.
Mm. Mm.
So what do you think? Will this results be valid for an online shopping, or how would things change? Can you use something like this in online shopping?
I think originally we think about it. I mean, to be frank, so originally we think about the offline could be very interesting because there was a hot topic and ideas about aspect of the online to offline. So and also when we try to do the experiments, we started with virtual reality type of things. And then so that's a point, that's appointment, the pointer to this type of research design. And then for the online, definitely, I think that can be easily replicated. So replicated in terms of for instance, you have a clickstream data, which can be analogy for your shopping history or shopping trajectory or so on. And then so that I think that would be applicable. But I mean, in terms of the engagement, I think that's slightly different. So I know that people now is getting more to the online shopping type of things, but the most still there. So sometimes it's nothing to do much about the shopping itself, but it's more like engagement and the atmospheres we are really enjoy shopping. So I think in terms of me, I'm a very homeboy type of person. Better for my girlfriend, for my wife. So most likely, so they are still dragging me to the shopping mall anyway. Yeah. So they are looking at the best deal, and then but actually they still want to be there. And then so I also see actually really offline type of shoppings engaging with the gamifications. So I mean, back to old days, we have like small books, and then so you have a stamp, something like that, and then. So I think that's actually the motivation we're doing so. And then I believe there's a potential on the gamification, but in terms of long-term effect, I'm not so sure. So that'll probably need to have a different type of motivations. So you cannot see much things you do your alone. So the gathering and the environmental factors will be much lower in terms of that. So that's why we want to see each other rather than to do the webinar. So we like to have the offline, I mean, conversation and do a seminar. That would be the most effective and the most engaging way. So because gamification is all about engagement, so I think that's slightly different, but we can learn something from the offline engagement as well.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any other questions? No.
I just have one kind of thought. About the some of the gender differences that you observed. And I think some of that will go away as younger women come up and they become more confident in their economic power and they have more equality in their economic power, and shopping will become less of a comfortable entertainment environment and more of a chore, the way that a lot of men see it now. And I say that because just observing some gender differences, like when I was doing a lot of technical training, when I would have older women in there, they were such wonderful students. They would sit there and they wouldn't touch a thing on their keyboard until I told them to, which almost got annoying. But the older men would often sit there and not do a thing, but wouldn't ask a question and just sort of radiate anger that, you know, they were there in the first place. And then the younger guys would just jump in and just start going to town. You know, they would, whatever lesson plan I had there, they would just run ahead of me. And so it could be kind of chaotic trying to teach them, because sometimes they get so far ahead and then they get confused. And anyways, but one thing I noticed is that the younger women behaved a whole lot more like the guys than the older women. And like I said, I think, again, that's a different perspective on computers and learning and their place in the workforce and all those kinds of things. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of the gender observations change.
They change over time. Yeah, I mean, Eva, you make a great point. And then also I want to back out your thoughts. So I think now the younger woman behave more like the younger guys, and the younger guys now more behavior like a younger woman as well. So I think actually that's exactly equality taking places, and then that's actually how the human beings, I mean, moving forward in terms of spiritual independence rather than the gender by physical by their physicals. So that's actually, I think you make a great point, and then I expect this probably going to change. So that's also, I think that's also the limitation for the empirical work. So that's have the very specific context, specific settings, and then so, but we still look at the best of empirics, try to generalize, try to get some insight from the analysis. I mean, Eva, you make a great point. Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, if not, again, Dr. Ho, thank you very much for wonderful presentations, good interaction, question answers. Appreciate you spending your time and presenting your work here. Thank you, and thank you everyone else for attending the Finley Chair webinar. And we'll see you at the next one on April 1st, actually, on April Fool's Day. So you'll get the invitation soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.